Day 7 was meant to be difficult, but not this difficult. Day 7 was meant to be tough, but not this tough. In the midst of the rush, the earth trembles, and a goblin king strides out like. In the center of the stampede, the earth trembles, and a goblin king strides out like a ultimate adversary that shouldn't be present this soon. A concluding adversary that shouldn't be present this soon. The townsfolk begin getting forced back. Their blades are becoming dull, and even Assel is at risk. Hazard. But our MC Kamaya isn't merely another participant. He's the individual who created this game. So when the Goblin King swings that massive mace, Kamaya does something outrageous. So when the Goblin King swings that massive mace, Kamaya does something outrageous. He begins deflecting repeatedly, tallying each strike like his existence relies on it. He begins deflecting repeatedly, tallying each strike as if his existence relies on it. Because it does. Once he attains the mystical figure, he activates a concealed glitch that transforms his assaults into assured. Once he attains the magic figure, he activates a concealed glitch that transforms his strikes into assured critical hits. Crucial strikes. In one surge, he charges in and slashes the Goblin King down, preserving the base by a whisker. In one surge, he dashes in and slashes the Goblin Lord down, preserving the base by a whisker. But conquering one battle isn't sufficient. Kamaya enhances the base to level 8, strengthens the walls and workshop, and Ginger finally. Kamaya enhances the base to level 8, improves the walls and workshop, and Ginger finally. Kamaya enhances the base to level 8, strengthens the walls and workshop, and Ginger finally reveals something enormous. Golems that can battle like their masters and even assist with tasks. Well, how did he find himself in this predicament? There is a game named Last, and it is the globe's top-selling survival game where participants collect resources in a realm populated by creatures. Participants collect materials in a realm populated by creatures. They also construct shelters and strive to endure alongside their allies. There is the liberty of tactics and also in complexity of the NPCs, making the game quite equitable. Regarding the occurrences and enhancements, they are conducted regularly, ultimately presenting new. As for the occurrences and announcements, they are conducted regularly, ultimately presenting new advancements to the game each time. However, behind this top-selling game is the lone creator, a recluse guy named. The only creator, a recluse guy named. Behind this top-selling game is the only developer, a recluse guy named Kamaya Sushi. Sitting in his chamber, Kamaya just completed the version 3 update of the game, making. Sitting in his chamber, Kamaya just completed the version 3 upgrade of the game, making it the finest version of itself thus far. He incorporated the base level 100, which activates an ending narrative for the season. He executed the base level 100, which activates a concluding narrative for the season once attained. He then grabs his phone to send a message to his partner that Season 3 is active. He then grabs his phone to send a message to his partner that Season 3 is active. However, Kamaya doesn't believe he is going to halt at Season 3, as he is already envisioning the next season. Apparently, it's been 5 years since creation began, and it's been 3 years. Evidently, it's been 5 years since creation commenced, and it's been 3 years since it was launched. Even with this, Kamaya still has numerous concepts in his mind, and he thinks the game is only going to become more captivating from this point forward. From here on. Just afterward, his associate Anahara enters the room, inquiring if the game has genuinely been completed. Kamaya is astonished that Anahara appeared so quickly, and Anahara discloses. That he came rushing the instant he received the message. Evidently, Anahara Wataru is the game's commercial and licensing representative. Delegate. Anahara praises Kamaya for completing the game independently, but Kamaya notes that the background music and certain designs were contracted out. states that the background tunes and certain designs were contracted out. Even with this, Anahara still believes it is remarkable that Kamaya was able to complete the game independently. Kamaya then gives back the flowers, telling Anahara that they were capable of. Kamaya then brings back the flowers, informing Anahara that they were able to achieve this size because of him. Essentially, Kamaya had all the time in the universe to develop the game, because Anahara was backing him as a producer. Because Anahara was backing him as a producer. It appears that Anahara and Kamaya actually encountered each other in high school. It appears that Anahara and Kamaya indeed encountered each other in high school. Kamaya regards him as his patron who proposed to create his game and even chose not to attend university after viewing it prior to its launch. Anahara then informs Kamaya that the game is too excellent not to market, unless the individuals in the world are already becoming foolish. He notes that the latest user satisfaction poll received an exceptionally high rating of 98. High score of 98. Kamaya hears this and resolves that he is not going to cease until he achieves 100. However, Anahara believes this is unfeasible because there is no game that attracts every single individual. Kamaya, on the contrary, thinks it is feasible to make people. Kamaya, conversely, believes it is feasible to make individuals perceive the game as engaging since they have responded to the survey and demonstrated interest previously. Anahara then approaches Kamaya's desk, inquiring if he. Anahara then strolls over to Kamaya's workstation, inquiring if he endorsed the paperwork he forwarded the previous time. Kamaya replies affirmatively. Kamaya agrees, and because the papers are rather numerous, he informs Anahara that he is going to entrust the specifics to him. Anahara seizes the document and displays a wicked grin. Anahara seizes the document and emits a wicked grin, while informing Kamaya that he values the confidence. Suddenly, 3 burly guys enter the room, and Anahara informs Kamaya that he is going to seize the documents while making it clear that he is finished. Kamaya is astonished to hear this, and he inquires Anahara what he signifies by that. Anahara mocks him, stating that the only thing he understands how to do is create games, which is why he is taking all the rights to last away from him, removing all the privileges to last from him. Kamaya disputes with Anahara, reminding him that he developed the game, and he is going to require him for upcoming updates, future enhancements. Anahara then informs Kamaya that with the execution of base level 100, last is already a finished game. Anahara informs Kamaya that, from the commercial perspective, upcoming updates are essentially pointless. This angers Kamaya, and he hurries to seize. This annoys Kamaya, and he hurries to seize Anahara's shirt, but one of the bodyguards, Anahara's top, but one of the security personnel brings him down to the ground. Anahara informs Kamaya that he deliberately brought bodyguards, because he understands that there is no chance Kamaya would have silently consented. Anahara tells Kamaya that his fixation on the game was in the manner, because he continued making updates that didn't result directly in earnings. Furthermore, Kamaya's oversight was too rigid, which didn't allow them space to adequately broaden the products. Nevertheless, now that the game is completed, Anahara thinks that they can maximize profits without Kamaya involved. Kamaya is disheartened, and he reprimands Anahara. Kamaya is disheartened, and he scolds Anahara for not discussing it with him. Anahara dismisses this, stating there is no chance. Kamaya would have consented. Anahara then instructs Kamaya to exit the room because it is also part of the matters he agreed to in the contract to relinquish. In the agreement to release. With this, Kamaya lost all power to endure, and he contemplated initiating a legal action. And he contemplated initiating a lawsuit, but the prospects were not appearing favorable. But the perspective was not appearing favorable. In addition to this, Anahara ensured to adeptly influence the public sentiment, crafting an environment where individuals thought the game ought to belong to Anahara. The match should belong to Anahara. Kamaya is left fuming in his chamber, and while pounding his desk, he observes something. And while striking his table, he observes something on his PC. Inquisitive about what it is, he clicks it, and the notification he receives from this informs him. And the communication he receives from this informs him to remain in the game universe eternally, since he adores the game so much. Kamaya is pondering what this signifies. Kamaya is pondering what this signifies when a radiant light emerges in front of him, drawing him into the PC. By the moment he opens his eyes, he discovers himself in the game universe, where he is being greeted by the game's helper, a fairy named Leafy. While explaining to him what the game entails, it suddenly occurs to Kamaya that the attire he is wearing represents a character intended for the free trial edition. Indicates a character intended for the free trial edition. This is essentially a character that possesses the lowest attributes, no abilities, no gear compatibility, and it is the most feeble character fated to perish. And it is the most fragile character fated to perish during the initial monster assault after undergoing the fundamental progression of the game. Aware of all this, Kamaya worries that he is certainly. Understanding all of this, Kamaya worries that he is certainly going to perish on the initial night of the game. Leafy then requests Kamaya to enter his name. In the given window. However, instead of typing his name, he recalls that he can access the developer mode. With a concealed code. He enters the code, and it activates a vivid light. Indicating that it functioned. Leafy is astonished to witness this, and it instantly occurs to her that Kamaya is the one who progressed last. She nearly experiences a brain freeze from flushing so intensely. She nearly has a mind freeze from reddening so intensely, but she succeeds in composing herself. To present herself to Kamaya. Apparently, Leafy is a woodland fairy who safeguards nature, believing that human actions are also a part of nature. And for this reason, she offers various pieces of guidance to individuals who visit the forest. Kamaya then inquires if this is the realm of finality, and he verifies it, stating it is certainly the game universe. Kamaya then inquires Leafy if she can access the game's meta details. He wants her to examine the sections related solely to development. Leafy responds that she can accomplish this. since Kamaya has already accessed developer mode. Leafy then shows the meta details. Leafy then presents the meta details, which indicates that everything was essentially produced by Kamaya. However, the game master has been altered to Wataru Anahara. Leafy is astonished to see Anahara's name. And she inquires Kamaya who the guy is. With sorrow in his heart, Kamaya responds that Anahara is the guy who took the rights to last from him. Kamaya also thinks that he is presently in the game realm due to Anahara's participation. Leafy is disheartened when she learns this, and she discusses how she cannot pardon Anahara's deeds. Conversely, on the flip side, Kamaya is questioning why he is in the gaming realm, as he doesn't grasp the reasoning behind this. The only inference he can reach is that he can't permit himself to perish in the game world. Kamaya vows to endure the game realm and reclaim his game from Anahara. Kamaya then inquires Leafy if she will assist him, and she replies affirmatively. Following this, Kamaya utilizes the warp function. Subsequent to this, Kamaya utilizes the warp function to locate himself at the base station. To discover himself at the base station, which remains a level 1 base. Leafy expresses regret. Leafy expresses regret, stating the finest you could construct is a level 1 foundation. Nevertheless, Kamaya has no problems with this as these are the requirements he left in the game. Because these are the details he left in the game. It appears that even when he is in developer mode, all he can observe are the settings. All he can observe are the specifications. Kamaya then proceeds into the base where he discovers a magical gem resting at the far end of the chamber. This is a magical gem known as Arcanite. This is an enchanted stone referred to as Arcanite, also known as the Origin Ore. It is a stone with unique energy that can accumulate resources and transform them into weapons or objects, and transform them into arms or objects. Since it is the guide, Leafy thinks Kamaya doesn't require it, but Kamaya disagrees, stating he is going to undertake the tutorial. Since creatures don't appear during the guide, Kamaya thinks that it is the most secure moment for him to collect resources. Leafy concurs with this because regular gathering might be challenging due to the fact that Kamaya is utilizing the trial version character, which is designed to perish on the first night. Even Kamaya realizes that in his present condition, he has no chance at all. Kamaya then proposes that they commence right away because he can't squander time. Because he cannot squander time. Leafy consents to this, and she promptly initiates the tutorial. And she promptly kicks the tutorial into action. Kamaya begins sprinting around to collect resources since he understands everything that there is to understand. Kamaya then comes back by evening, appearing completely worn out. Kamaya then comes back by evening, appearing completely worn out. He informs Leafy that they must create before it becomes dark. He informs Leafy that they must create before it becomes dark. And Leafy is astonished that Kamaya possesses supplies to create. Kamaya discloses that he made it feasible. Kamaya discloses that he accomplished it within the parameters. However, there hasn't been any participant. However, there hasn't been any participant who has accomplished it until that moment. Kamaya then begins the creation process. Kamaya then begins the creation process. And in no time, he acquires a wooden sword and a small wooden barrier. Kamaya is amazed that he obtained the barrier. Kamaya is astonished that he obtained the barricade, but at the same moment, he realizes it is untrustworthy, since the trial version character wasn't intended to be capable of completing the first night. Wasn't intended to be capable of clearing the first night. Even though the foes are going to act precisely as he anticipates them to, Kamaya understands the survival likelihood is a few % at its best. Typically, the player would be directed to the commercial version, but this time around, everything is distinct. But this occasion, everything is distinct. Later that evening, Kamaya obtains the mission to endure the night, and Leafy hopes him well. To endure the night, and Leafy hopes for his success. Kamaya stands before the base, anticipating the foe. Kamaya stands in front of the headquarters, waiting for the foe. He soon notices a deer, and while he is still gazing at the deer is slain by a goblin. The stag is slain by a goblin. Essentially, they are minor creatures with limited intellect. They occasionally strike in groups and certainly should not be undervalued. Kamaya, on the contrary, has poor statistics. Kamaya, on the contrary, has poor stats, is armed with a wooden blade, and possesses no unique ability. Without delaying, the goblin charges at Kamaya. Without squandering time, the goblin leaps toward Kamaya, intending to thrust its sword into Kamaya's throat, aiming to thrust its blade into Kamaya's throat. However, Kamaya succeeds in evading the blow. Leafy understands that Kamaya is only capable of avoiding this. Leafy understands that Kamaya is only capable of evading this because he comprehends the goblin's attributes thoroughly. However, the goblin persists in striking at Kamaya. However, the goblin keeps striking at Kamaya, and at some moment, Kamaya gets sliced on his arm. This essentially informs him that his stats are worthless. This essentially informs him that his statistics are worthless, and even though he is aware the assault is approaching, he cannot evade it. To exacerbate the situation, his power is also inadequate, which is quite anticipated. Before he realizes it, he gets struck in the chest. Before he realizes it, he gets struck in the chest, causing him to spit up blood. He is sent tumbling into the distance. He sends hurtling into the distance, and by the manner he is getting injured, he understands that the agony is genuine. He understands that the agony is genuine. However, he is not going to remain idle and allow the game developer be slain by the game itself. Kamaya then sprints toward the base. Kamaya then sprints toward the base, compelling the goblin to pursue him. Compelling the goblin to pursue him. Since he lacks the strength to confront a goblin directly, he jumps into the air while triggering the small barrier. The goblin is compelled to jump after him. The goblin is compelled to jump after him, but by the moment it touches down, it becomes ensnared in the obstruction, ultimately piercing it. With the goblin's motion limited, Kamaya thinks he has an opportunity to slay it if he exerts the full force of his body weight behind it. He jumps toward the goblin, and he puts all he possesses into the blow. He hits the goblin's head. He hits the goblin's head, ultimately slaying it and completing the quest to endure the night. Kamaya then vows to himself to outlast the game. Kamaya then vows to endure the game, even though it is quite difficult to accomplish. But he is driven by the fact that he is the sole one who understands everything about the game. Kamaya is eager to crawl up. Kamaya is prepared to climb up from the very garbage to reclaim everything that was his. The following morning, Kamaya stands before the enchanted stone, extending the sword to sense the surface. Without a doubt, he could perceive that it feels very genuine. He could perceive that it seems very genuine. Leafy then appears, inquiring if he is going out to collect resources again. However, Kamaya replies no because he thinks that yesterday's lesson was already sufficient. He informs Leafy that he is only going to concentrate. He informs Leafy that he is solely going to concentrate on creating for the day because there is someone she must encounter as quickly as she can. Leafy accesses the inventory. Leafy opens the stockpile, and she is astonished to observe the quantity of resources that Kamaya has collected. Essentially in the game, different substances can be gathered from around the base, and these substances are transformed into 3 categories of fundamental resources, which are then kept within the mana stone, which are subsequently kept within the mana stone. The initial resource is mana, which serves as a type of life energy utilized for enhancing individuals or for producing magic-type items. The second one is element. The second one is component, and this is necessary for creating tangible products like nourishment and structures. The third is gold. And it is utilized to purchase items that cannot be created. Kamaya then begins crafting. Kamaya then begins creating with the resources he possesses. By the moment it is finished, by the time it is completed, he succeeded in acquiring a bow, 10 arrows, a lookout tower, and timber. Even though he would have cherished to create something more potent, his poor stats would hinder him. Kamaya then expresses his wish. Kamaya then states his wish to acquire allies if he truly wants to endure beyond day 7. If he truly desires to endure beyond day 7. It appears that a rush occurs on day 7. In the game, it is recognized that creatures appear essentially every night, but the stampede is a colossal monster surge that happens every 7 days, and it is on an entirely different tier of challenge. Creatures would swarm out in their quantities, and the difficulty would be elevated so that even gamers of the complete retail edition would find it tough to endure. In principle, it is challenging for a trial version character. In principle, it is difficult for a trial version character to reach day 7, but if they do, it is deemed unfeasible to overcome a stampede with a trial version character. With a test version character, the concept is that if one can complete it in the demo, there would be no necessity to purchase the complete game. Even Leafy is panicking because he understands how difficult it is to endure a stampede. Kamaya is inquiring what would occur if he perished in the game realm. Leafy responds that she has no clue, but it is recognized that NPCs don't even respawn, which indicates Kamaya's demise will certainly not conclude favorably. However, Leafy reassures Kamaya. Nevertheless, Leafy guarantees Kamaya that she is going to assist him in any manner she can. Nevertheless, because of rules, however, owing to rules, she is not permitted to engage in combat. Even when it pertains to counsel, she thinks Kamaya doesn't require her guidance, but what she can do is collect information, and this is what she vows to do. Kamaya's pleased to hear this. Kamaya's pleased to hear this, and he appreciates Leafy for it, telling her that he will be relying on her, informing her that he will be relying on her. Kamaya also advises Leafy to cease referring to him as creator and simply use his name, but Leafy declines this. Following this, Kamaya exits. After this, Kamaya steps outdoors and he constructs the watchtower. Kamaya discusses how troublesome it is. Kamaya discusses how troublesome it is that he must be physically present to arrange everything. Leafy verifies this, stating the fundamental level is still low, which is why he won't be able to launch things directly from the map. Straight from the map. After the observation tower is finished, Kamaya stands in it to take a look at the surroundings. Kamaya is astonished. Kamaya is astonished and he discusses how amazing it is. Leafy coats him. Foliage coats him, reminding him that he was the one who fashioned everything. Observing how astonishing everything is, noticing how amazing everything is, Kamaya gains additional inspiration to truly reclaim it from Anahara. Later that evening, Kamaya obtains the mission to endure the night once more. Kamaya obtains the mission to endure the night once more. He draws his blade, anticipating the foe to appear. Waiting for the foe to appear. Moments later, 2 goblins materialize from the woods. He's not astonished by this because the notion of battle is actually distinct from the initial day. Is truly distinct from the initial day. Kamaya doesn't waver before taking his action. Even the bow is quite difficult to draw. Even the bow is quite difficult to draw because at his level, there are no power modifiers. Kamaya clearly can't grumble about this. Kamaya clearly can't grumble about this since he was the one who arranged it. Unexpectedly, he misses his initial attempt. Unexpectedly, he misses his initial attempt and Leafy informs him that this occurred because the precision modifiers are also not enabled yet. Are also not engaged yet. Kamaya cannot grumble since he crafted everything to be that manner. Kamaya then takes another attempt and this time, he strikes one of the goblins in the leg. On this occasion, he strikes one of the goblins in the leg. The goblin collapses as it shrieks in agony. But Kamaya is not finished yet. He shoots another arrow that penetrates the goblin's chest to conclude it. That punctures the goblin's torso to conclude it. Kamaya then leaps from the lookout tower to shorten the gap between him and the final goblin. From what he discovered the evening prior, he has determined that there is a method he can remain one step ahead even though his statistics are poor. With the goblin near him, Kamaya is able to uphold his precision and the arrow goes directly into the goblin's form. Kamaya shoots another round to bring the goblin down. He then approaches it to deliver a headshot to conclude it. With this, Kamaya endures the second night. And Leafy commemorates the victory with him. And Leafy rejoices in the victory with him. However, there is a woman observing everything develop from the woods. The following morning, Kamaya emerges to collect the usable bolts because he can't afford to squander resources. Essentially, discharged arrows have a possibility of shattering. Shot arrows have a possibility of shattering, but those that stay whole can be retrieved and utilized again. While examining, Kamaya discovers that there are 2 unbroken arrows, but he can only locate one. However, he is not astonished because he already understands what occurred to the second arrow. Just then, he receives a mission, instructing him to discover the location of the missing arrow. Kamaya notices a path leading into the woods. And he pursues it. As they navigate the woods, Kamaya encourages Leafy to be cautious. Leafy reassures him that she will be alright since she can't disrupt the game's material, and the game also cannot injure her. It appears that the game has a function. It appears that the game possesses a characteristic where NPCs can transform into companions if specific criteria are fulfilled during gameplay. An NPC will periodically roam the base. An NPC will periodically roam the base, and if one completes their distinct recruitment mission, the mentioned NPC will join the player. The mentioned NPC will accompany the player. Essentially, NPCs possess different expertise ranging from combat to manufacturing, which renders them crucial for completing the game. Since his existence is presently at stake. Kamaya understands that he certainly requires companions. Meanwhile, the female hunter, Anemone, the woman hunter, Anemone, observing them the evening prior, is concealing herself in a tree. She thinks that she is in the safe. She thinks that she is in the open and leaps down when she notices what seems to be a snare. Unexpectedly, Kamaya emerges behind her, informing her that they are not her foes. Rather than paying attention to whatever Kamaya has to express, instead of hearing whatever Kamaya has to express, Anemone makes a run for it and rushes into the woods. Anemone makes a dash for it and sprints into the woods. Even Kamaya is astonished that Anemone fled because he never executed a progression like that. Leafy then comes up with the notion. Leafy then proposes the notion that since Kamaya, the game's originator, has now become an inhabitant of the game realm, it seems that the game plot is no longer progressing on its own. Leafy then informs Kamaya that he may need to convince Anemone through genuine conversation because they have undoubtedly frightened her. It then occurs to Kamaya that participating in the game and truly engaging in it are two distinct matters. Kamaya begins to ponder if the characters will turn into foes if he manages the entire scenario incorrectly since they are already sentient. Later that day, Kamaya goes back to the base. Kamaya comes back to the base after collecting supplies. Leafy inquires if he was able to restock. Leafy inquires if he managed to restore the essential components, and Kamaya replies affirmatively, disclosing that it was indeed beneficial that no creatures appeared. He enters the base station and proposes that they begin creating immediately. Leafy then inquires if he believes his strategy would succeed. And Kamaya responds that he was the one who crafted Anemone's background, and he is confident that the approach he is about to utilize has the greatest likelihood of success. In Anemone's history, she was a tracker who resided alone with her father, and after he passed away, she persisted in living in the woods by herself. This is essentially how Kamaya crafted her. But he thinks that if he can make her experience the comfort of coexisting with others, she might truly forsake her impassive way of life and accompany him. Even with this, Kamaya is not entirely assured since they are off script. Kamaya then creates the resources he requires. Kamaya then creates the materials he requires, which are an iron pot, a ladle, salt, pepper, minced meat, and 2 sets of cutlery. Minced meat and 2 sets of dishware. Once the components are complete, Kamaya gets to cooking, and he conveys his astonishment. That he is truly preparing food in a game which he didn't believe would be feasible. Leafy informs him that he can indeed produce completed dishes once his level rises. But Kamaya states that cooking is not truly a negative experience. Leafy could observe that Kamaya is skilled at cooking. And Kamaya states that he resided alone for a long time, so he is accustomed to isolating himself at home just so he can focus on the game. Kamaya notes that after he just completed high school, Anahara used to visit frequently, but everything about that is now bygone history. Moments later, Anemone appears. Instants later, Anemone appears aiming her bow at Kamaya. Kamaya lifts his hand, informing Anemone that they are not her foe. This perplexes Anemone, who inquires Kamaya if there are others accompanying him. It then occurs to Kamaya that Anemone can't perceive Leafy. Kamaya amends himself. Kamaya rectifies himself, informing Anemone that he is solitary. He presents himself and Anemone does likewise. She then inquires Kamaya where she is because she was pursuing, and before she realizes it, she discovers herself in the woods where she didn't even identify. Kamaya informs Anemone that he just arrived there as well. Kamaya informs Anemone that he has just arrived as well, which indicates he is unfamiliar with the arrangement of the region too, which signifies he doesn't understand the arrangement of the region either. Kamaya indicates the meal on the flame, inquiring Anemone if she is curious. He guarantees her that it is not toxic. He guarantees her that it is not toxic, but the meal is simply too large for one individual to consume by themselves. For a single individual to consume solo, Kamaya takes a portion of the meal and hands it to Anemone, informing her that it is a hamburger patty which is prepared by mincing beef, onions, breadcrumbs, salt, pepper, and then cooking it on a grill. Salt, spice, and then grilling it. Anemone takes a bite and she instantly experiences foodgasmic, compelling her to hurry the food. Compelling her to hurry the meal while Kamaya grins behind her. After she finishes eating, she expresses gratitude to Kamaya for the meal, telling him that it is her initial time tasting the dish. She then inquires Kamaya if she can have additional. She then inquires Kamaya if she can obtain more, and Kamaya replies affirmatively because he possesses the components. However, he informs her that there is a cost. Anemone inquires Kamaya about his desires. Anemone inquires Kamaya what he desires, and Kamaya responds that he wishes for her power in combat because they are in a perilous location. Anemone pauses for a moment to contemplate it. And Kamaya informs her that the sole method not to be a victim is to be the predator. The system then strikes Kamaya with the usual quest. The system then strikes Kamaya with the standard task of enduring the night, while informing him that Anemone will participate if he can battle alongside her and triumph. Unexpectedly, Anemone informs Kamaya that she is ready to accompany him in combat. Shortly after this, 3 goblins emerge in the distance, and Leafy thinks this is all. But Kamaya understands that there are still additional ones concealed in the woods. Just as he mentioned, more goblins appear from the forest. Kamaya readies for combat, and he informs Anemone that he requires assistance. Kamaya draws his sword from the storage area. Kamaya extracts his blade from the storage area, and this astonishes Anemone, who begins contemplating if Kamaya is a contract possessor of the Mana Stone. Kamaya pursues the goblins, evading their blows, and the instant he succeeds in separating one of them, he summons Anemone, who completes the goblin. He concludes the goblin with a headshot. Anemone is amazed that even though Kamaya is occupied in battle, he is still monitoring their line of sight. Kamaya persists in grappling with the goblins. Kamaya keeps battling with the goblins, and the instant he discovers an opportunity again, he summons Anemone to handle the task. To perform the task. Anemone replies quickly and jabs a hole in the goblin's skull. In the goblin's mind, one of the goblins abruptly shoves Kamaya to the floor, but he has already acquired so much energy that he propels the goblin off of his body before Anemone encounters it halfway. With an arrow to the skull. At this moment, the other goblins are furious. That the two have slain their allies. That the pair have slain their companions. They charge at Kamaya more fiercely while others pursue Anemone. Anemone launches the initial shot directly at one of the goblins' torsos. However, she understands that the bow won't be capable of making the second shot, and she draws out her dagger. She draws out her blade to intercept the approaching strike. Kamaya then yells at Anemone to retreat. Towards the cabin because she doesn't require toward the cabin because she doesn't need to concentrate on completing the goblins. Anemone does as instructed. Anemone complies with instructions and she performs a backflip toward the lodge. The hostile goblin pursuing her. The hostile goblin pursuing her soon triggers a snare and it plunges into an already set spike. And it descends into an already set spike. Kamaya grins when he understands that the snare succeeded and he praises his concept for creating the traps. And he praises his concept for constructing the traps. Anemone then takes the initiative, leaving a look of terror on the other goblin that was formerly pursuing her. Conversely, Kamaya is struggling to cope. On the flip side, Kamaya is struggling to manage the goblin with a mace that is attempting to take its life. He understands that he is facing a tough time due to the poor stats that the character possesses. Thanks to the garbage statistics that the character possesses. Before he realizes it, the goblin disarms him, but just as the goblin is about to crush his skull, an arrow comes soaring directly. A projectile comes soaring straight into the goblin's skull, slaying it. Into the goblin's mind, slaying it. Kamaya is astonished, and when he spins around, he understands that Anemone had slain the zombie. He understands that Anemone had slain the zombie she was battling with a dagger, which provided her just enough time to assist him. With this, Kamaya endures on the third day too. After the conflict, Kamaya proceeds to the cabin. Following the conflict, Kamaya proceeds to the lodge to arrange the stock with the Munstone. This is when Anemone verifies that he is genuinely a Munstone contractor. Kamaya affirms this, stating he recently contracted the magic stone. Apparently, NPCs truly comprehend. Evidently, NPCs truly comprehend different player-specific skills to be unique sorcery only employable by those bound to a Munstone when aligned with game controls. Kamaya then ultimately takes his action. Kamaya then ultimately makes his move, and he informs Anemone to accompany him since she has nowhere to turn and he requires allies to endure as well. Anemone discusses the well-known saying. Anemone discusses the well-known phrase that centers on those who engaged with the Munstone having a purpose for the world. Grounded in this conviction, Anemone thinks that there could have been a cause for her getting lost and arriving at the place where Kamaya is. She became disoriented and arrived where Kamaya is. Furthermore, she praises Kamaya's fighting abilities. She then extends her hand to shake Kamaya. Which is a signal of consent. The system notifies Kamaya that Anemone has become part of his team. The subsequent morning, Kamaya rises early to make breakfast. Shortly after this, Anemone emerges. Not long after this, Anemone emerges and Kamaya nearly faints in astonishment when he sees how stunning she appears. When he observes how stunning she appears without her battle attire, Kamaya swiftly turns away so that she won't notice how flushed he has become. Anemone discusses how she has resided with her father in the woods for a long time, and this signifies a transformation for her. Apparently, Kamaya has plans of enhancing the base. Evidently, Kamaya has plans of enhancing the base so he can incorporate more rooms as quickly as he can. Kamaya acknowledges that Anemone's inclusion is a valuable fighting asset, but he realizes that only he and Anemone cannot endure the stampede, which is why enhancing the base is essential to their survival. After breakfast, Kamaya exits to collect resources. Kamaya exits to collect materials and Anemone praises his effectiveness. At collecting resources. When they come back to the base, Anemone observes that Kamaya appears anxious and she inquires him what is troubling. What is the matter? Kamaya discloses that the assets required to upgrade the base are insufficient yet. Anemone is puzzled by what Kamaya signifies by enhancing the base. Kamaya clarifies that if they accumulate sufficient resources in the magic stone, they can utilize its energy to build structures and establish barricades. He notes that this was the reason he requested her assistance in collecting resources, but it seems that it is still insufficient. Kamaya states that there is a creature surge that occurs every 7 days and they will require barricades and additional traps. He informs her that if they are going to endure, they must be ready. After hearing this, Anemone steps out, telling Kamaya that she is going to collect more of the resources that they require. Kamaya expresses his gratitude for her assistance, informing her that he will consider other alternatives in the meantime. Kamaya then discusses how challenging it is to level up, even though he has managed to recruit Anemone early in the game. Kamaya wishes that he had a drop rate enhancement to assist him. From Leafy's advice, it appears that some character skills and magical items possess effects that enhance drop rates for superior items. However, Kamaya's trial version character lacks the mentioned bonuses. Doesn't possess the mentioned bonuses. Since there is no method with this, Kamaya informs Leafy that they need to consider an alternative approach, and he proposes that she raise all the developer mode consoles, all the creator mode terminals. Leafy joyfully does this, and she states that it would be wonderful if they could adjust the settings directly. Kamaya discloses that this is challenging system-wise. But even if they are able, executing it while the game is operating is quite hazardous. This is due to Last being an intricate game system and multiple AI modification systems are functioning in real time. Essentially, if a numerical inconsistency appears in the game, the AI spares no effort rectifying it. Nevertheless, corrections only function for inconsistencies. However, adjustments only function for inconsistencies within the game's design parameters because excessive alterations could surpass the AI's correction limits, leading to unforeseen glitches or failures. However, Kamaya understands completely that they are not going to endure the seventh day as it stands. He begins contemplating if there is an alternative approach beyond the usual gameplay. Suddenly, it occurs to him that with developer features, with creator capabilities, there could be a method to enhance regardless of resource quantity. Kamaya then inquires Leafy if it is feasible for them to utilize instant build mode. When it pertains to instant construction mode, it is a trial feature that was utilized during development which permits erecting structures, which permits constructing amenities and enhancing regardless of assets available, and enhancing irrespective of assets available. It then occurs to Leafy that with instant construction mode, the system AI won't meddle with adjustments. Kamaya verifies this, stating the system is intended to accept alterations made with developer permission. Since Kamaya is logged in with developer mode, Leafy thinks the application programming interface API ought to launch. Should unlock. Leafy promptly leaps on it, eager to look for it, and in no time, she discovers it. Kamaya inquires if she can reach it. Leafy states that it appears unfeasible from the console, but if he plunges in, he might be able to. With this, Leafy plunges in before Kamaya could caution her that it is perilous. Once she is inside, she locates the access point. She locates the entry point and she begins entering the series of commands she desires. And she begins entering the collection of guidelines she desires. In the course of accomplishing this, the upkeep AI activates because it thinks that Leafy is a glitch, because it thinks that Leafy is a pest. Realizing that she is in peril, Leafy accelerates the pace. At which she is performing what she is performing. Moments later, she is capable of reaching it and she accomplishes what must be completed before hurriedly leaping out of there. With perspiration streaming down his face, Kamaya inquires Leafy if she is all right and she confirms to him that she is fine. However, she notes the fact that she nearly got consumed by the maintenance AI. Kamaya is not astonished by this because he understands that Leafy entering the system isn't typical conduct. He deduces that the system must have identified her as a flaw and attempted to eradicate her, and attempted to remove her. Leafy panics when she learns that she nearly got eliminated. Kamaya then inquires if she can glance into the system from the console, which doesn't necessitate that she enter. Leafy does this and she yells out in surprise. Leafy performs this and she yells out in astonishment when she understands that the maintenance AIs have increased and there are now numerous of them. When Kamaya listens to this, he understands that reaching the same API again would be quite challenging. Leafy expresses regret for this, but Kamaya informs her that it is not her responsibility but evidence that the system is functioning properly. In fact, Kamaya thinks that he ought to be the one apologizing to Leafy for causing her to undertake such a perilous assignment. Nevertheless, he is pleased that she is unharmed and Leafy hurries over to embrace him. Thanks to Leafy's diligent effort, Kamaya receives the choice for the immediate construction and he initiates it. Anemone comes back later to observe that the foundation has become so distinct and larger. There are additional rooms and there are also barriers to safeguard the base. With this, the base ascends to level 3. With this, the foundation ascends to tier 3 and Anemone discusses how incredible the magic stones are. Kamaya then instructs Anemone to utilize any cabin that she prefers. Kamaya then informs Anemone to utilize any cabin that she prefers but recommends she choose swiftly on which one she desires. But implies she determines swiftly on which one she desires. Anemone is astonished and she inquires why he mentioned this. She hasn't completed posing her inquiry when a ray of light that contains a portal strikes the center of the base. And Kamaya informs her that they are on the verge of exhausting huts. By the time everything settles down, a group of people are observed searching around questioning where they are, curious about their location. Among them is a lad named Assel and his mother Rira. Surprised by their existence, astonished by their presence, Anemone grabs for her sword but Kamaya halts her. Anemone extends for her blade but Kamaya halts her. Kamaya observes that Assel has already positioned himself in front of the other villagers as a barrier just in case. Kamaya inhales deeply before presenting himself to the guys, informing them that he has merely been residing there for a couple of days prior to their arrival. Kamaya states that the facility is encircled by a woodland where creatures emerge and at night, the creatures assault the facility. In order to endure, Kamaya informs them that their collaboration is required. Taking a page from Erwin Smith's guidance, Kamaya speaks with a firm tone requesting the new guys to offer him their power. Just then, an elderly man with gray hair, Sylvian, steps forward, inquiring Kamaya if he just reached the region 2. Kamaya states that he was directed by a mystical stone. Kamaya states that he was directed by a mystical gem. Sylvian responds that he has heard of it, but he never imagined a day would arrive when he would be summoned to the origin or while he was still living. Abruptly, another townsman, a muscular guy, Waldo, dashes in, advising his peers not to regard Kamaya earnestly. Waldo states there is the chance that Kamaya dragged them through transfer sorcery to kidnap them. Waldo then faces two other individuals. Waldo then shifts to two other guys and they begin strolling away. Kamaya inquires where they are heading and Waldo states that they need to inspect the area. And Waldo states that they must examine the environment because he can't even verify if creatures truly manifest in the vicinity. He instructs the others to remain behind. While he and the two guys with him head out to explore. Kamaya then advises Anemone to safeguard the other villagers. Kamaya then instructs Anemone to safeguard the other villagers while he monitors the ones who have chosen to examine the surroundings. As they stroll through the woods, Kamaya encourages the villagers not to venture too far. But Waldo is so obstinate that he disregards all of Kamaya's cautions. Evidently, the region surrounding the base is intended for resource collection, but simultaneously, It is a perilous area where creatures emerge both day and night. As per the game system, according to the game framework, one cannot travel to another base once they depart the existing one. The farther a player moves from the base, the more powerful the creatures grow, which is why the entire setup is a framework intended to limit players' activities. Moments later, Waldo and his crew. Instance later, Waldo and his companions discover a group of adorable rabbits with antlers on their heads. One of them inquires Kamaya if the rabbits are one of the creatures that assault the base, and Kamaya verifies this. However, Waldo questions this truth and Kamaya chooses to remain behind and allow him to discover the difficult way. Unbeknownst to them, the rabbits in front of them are recognized as the hunter bunny, and they are a meat-eating and ferocious rabbit-type creature. The bunny almost lulls its victim into a deceptive feeling of safety with its innocuous look, then encircles the victim to strike in packs. Before Waldo and his companions realize what is occurring, the rabbits swoop down on them. The rabbits descend on them. The trio yells in pain and Kamaya rushes toward them, instructing them to shut their eyes and hold their breath. Waldo is puzzled by this, but Kamaya urges him to hurry up. Rush. The trio unwillingly complies, and Kamaya pulls out 3 containers of pepper, which he tosses at the bunnies, which he hurls at the rabbits. The bottle shatters on their bodies, causing the rabbits to tumble off and withdraw from the assault. Kamaya then instructs Waldo and the others to flee. Instead of spinning around right away, Waldo opens his eyes to see what occurred, and some of the pepper gets in his eyes, making him tear up, causing him to become emotional. Kamaya then seizes one of the injured and discloses that they are returning to base. Without coaxing, they all adhere to Kamaya's guidance because the bunnies have risen once more. After jogging for a while, they securely return to base, and Waldo and others obtain medical care. With this, the villagers commence to settle in and they divide themselves into groups. Some started combat training. Some commenced battle preparation while others assisted in organizing items. During practice, one of the townsfolk observes that Waldo is more driven than previously. Waldo then states that the creatures are somewhat challenging. A little challenging, but he is assured that they can triumph the next time they face them. While everything is happening, Leafy approaches Kamaya, expressing that she is pleased that they have included more supporters to the base. Kamaya provides a curt response. A sudden response, and Leafy observes that something is amiss. She inquires about the issue and Kamaya indicates Isle. It appears that in the initial phases of the game, there are tutorial-like occurrences and characters are arranged to assist the players. And figures are arranged to assist the players comprehend the guidelines of the game universe. Apparently, Isle is the figure. Who is arranged to instruct the players that deceased NPCs cannot be restored. That deceased NPCs cannot be resurrected. During the creature assault that evening, it becomes apparent that Isle will perish in combat. The participants will then discover that NPCs are indispensable as they observe Isle's mother mourn her offspring. Since Isle is going to perish soon, Kamaya is left contemplating if he has the ability to alter his destiny. After the day's practice, Waldo and the fighters return famished, but the ladies in the group have arranged something to consume. In no time, everyone at the base. In a flash, everyone on the base gathers at the table to dine. While they are dining, Isle playfully inquires Anemone about his swordsmanship. Anemone confesses that his sword abilities are fairly decent. Anemone acknowledges that his sword abilities are fairly decent and this inspires Isle. However, Anemone informs him Anemone informs him that he still has a great deal of effort to put in regarding archery. When it pertains to archery, conversely, Kamaya is concentrated on Isle instead of consuming, since he realizes that Isle is merely a figure placed in the game to assist players comprehend the regulations of the game. He understands that even if the players don't dispatch Isle into combat, he would ultimately overrate his own power, stray into the fray, and then perish. This is essentially how the players discover that NPCs don't revive. Waldo seizes Isle, stroking him on the head. And begins discussing how he has ultimately matured, but his mother encourages Waldo to cease provoking him. Isle then informs his mother that creatures are constantly assaulting them, so he has no option but to learn how to combat. His mother contends that there is no necessity for him to battle because the grown-ups are present to do so. However, Isle offers a rebuttal. Isle offers a counter-argument, reminding his mother that he must safeguard everyone because this was how his father was as well. Because this was how his dad was too. Rira then informs Isle that his father was most definitely powerful, but he never confused rashness for bravery. Hearing this, Kamaya finally comprehends that rashness and bravery are two distinct concepts, and if he is going to keep Isle alive, he might require a new method. Kamaya realizes that he needs a plan with a possibility of success that is supported by bravery. Sylvian joins the discussion. Sylvian enters the dialogue, advising Isle not to be careless, just as his mother mentioned, and Isle recognizes the elderly man's counsel. Sylvian proposes that they collaborate to safeguard the village, but it suddenly occurs to them that it is no longer their village. Just then, Sylvian inquires Kamaya if there is any alcohol for them. if there is any liquor for them. Waldo is astonished to hear the elderly man requesting alcohol when they are about to enter combat. Sylvian states that he desires the liquor. Sylvian states that he desires the alcohol precisely for that reason, because he has determined that he won't perish sober, but Waldo thinks that this is a pitiful solution, and everyone erupts into laughter. Kamaya then informs them that if they can survive the night's assault, he will check if he can procure some beverages for a toast, and Waldo is the first to rise up to commemorate this. However, Kamaya's mood is somewhat poor, and Leafy inquires what the issue is. Kamaya states that he can't grasp the reality. Kamaya states that he can't comprehend the reality that he is the one who plunged the group into a harsh survival contest, although he is conscious that it is essential. To create the final game. Leafy concurs with him, reminding Kamaya that without him, the NPCs would not even be present. Kamaya then states that he doesn't want to be a worthless creator. Kamaya then states that he doesn't wish to be a worthless creator who doesn't take accountability for what he has produced. By nightfall, Kamaya assembles the group. By dusk, Kamaya assembles the team, and he informs them that they are anticipating another creature assault, which is why they need to review their arrangement. For improved readiness. Kamaya states that those who are not engaging in battle are to monitor the boundary from within the base. He informs them that the creatures typically approach from one side, but he doesn't want them to be negligent, so he wants everyone to divide and stay vigilant. And remain vigilant. And regarding the fighters, the three most proficient with a bow will create an archery team directed by Anemone. Kamaya then instructs the others to grab their swords. And advance to the front because they are going to be collaborating in pairs. One duo will act as sentinels. One couple will function as sentinels in front of the archery team, while Waldo's crew will be on the front lines with his companion. Waldo is thrilled when he learns this. When he hears this because he can't wait to spring into action. However, he wants to find out who Kamaya is teaming up with. He desires to find out who Kamaya is teaming up with, and Kamaya states that Ozil is alongside him. This surprises Ozil and his mother, and his mother swiftly intervenes, and his mother swiftly intervenes, informing Kamaya that Ozil simply can't leap into a conflict out of the blue. Kamaya informs the woman that he truly comprehends her worry, but he informs her that being in the rear doesn't ensure security, doesn't assure safety. Kamaya states that if Ozil is prepared to battle and he is capable of doing so, then it signifies the sooner he becomes stronger and improved. He adds that this also enhances his odds of survival. Even with this, Rira seems to be anxious, but Kamaya guarantees the woman that he is going to do everything in his capability to safeguard Ozil. Apparently, Kamaya is deliberately positioning Ozil. Kamaya is deliberately positioning Ozil on the front lines to anticipate the adversary's actions, since the system AI will be operating to guarantee that he perishes. Since the system AI will be shifting to ensure that he perishes. Even though it is not a certainty, Kamaya believes that chances need to be taken if he is to reverse a predetermined occurrence. Anemone then informs Rira that she can genuinely rely on Kamaya's fighting skills, but Kamaya lets Rira understand that he won't accept Ozil unless he is agreeable. He hasn't completed expressing this when Azil leaps up to declare he is eager because he desires to be powerful just like his father. Once everything is arranged, Kamaya delivers his inspirational address. To place the combatants in the proper mindset for the approaching conflict. As darkness descends upon them, Kamaya obtains the fourth day's mission, which is to endure the night once more. Shortly thereafter, the conflict commences and everything is proceeding as intended. Kamaya also instructs Leafy to assist in monitoring Ozil and inform him right away if anything occurs. Anemone stands in the lookout with her team and she instructs them to shoot the arrows at the goblins. She tells them that it is irrelevant. She informs them that it doesn't count if their target is coarse as long as they're capable of disrupting the opponent's arrangement. Destroying the foe's arrangement. While Anemone is dispersing the goblins, Kamaya and the attack team pursue the separated goblins. He instructs them to eliminate them one by one, but encourages them not to disrupt the pairs and uphold the numerical superiority. Kamaya also advises Waldo to ensure the foe doesn't approach the watchtower. Waldo recognizes the command, informing Kamaya that he doesn't need to remind him. It appears that the quantity of creatures has risen, and this is due to the rise in base level as well. Nevertheless, the warriors are genuinely coping quite well despite it being their initial combat. The warriors uphold their two-man units. The combatants uphold their two-person units, hindering the foes from organizing and then eliminating them. Waldo is the most thrilled as he pursues the goblins. Slicing them down like butter. Waldo is confronting one of the goblins when he observes that it is gazing in another direction. Waldo seizes this chance to take the goblin down. Waldo seizes this chance to bring the goblin down while taunting it for glancing away, while ridiculing it for turning away. Unbeknownst to him, the system software has activated which has placed the goblins on the mission to eliminate Usul. The conflict proceeds quite well. The conflict proceeds quite effectively, and thanks to the snares that they have established before the clash, they are able to diminish the foe count quite effectively. Kamaya also observes that the adversaries are simple to interpret. Kamaya also observes that the foes are simple to interpret, and this is due to Asal's presence. However, the game universe is not about to allow matters to pass effortlessly. Suddenly, the goblins become tougher and more aggressive. Anemone observes that the goblins are already shifting in an unusual manner, and she jumps off the watchtower. To join the fight on the ground. Leafy, on the other hand, ensures to remain with Asal. Leafy, on the contrary, ensures to remain with Asal, but abruptly she notices goblins surrounding Kamaya. And she alerts Kamaya. Before he pivots, before he spins around, the goblins have shoved Asal to the earth. Kamaya freaks out when he observes this. Kamaya freaks out when he notices this, and he yells at Asal, instructing him to rise back up swiftly. One of the goblins is on the verge of slaying him, but this is averted by Anemone's projectile. But this is stopped by Anemone's dart that creates a hole in the goblin's eye. Surprisingly, the goblins removes the dart. Unexpectedly, the goblins extracts the arrow and doesn't pursue Anemone. Anemone is astonished when she understands. Anemone is astonished when she discovers that the goblins are not focusing on her, which is rather strange considering how the goblins typically function. On the other hand, Valdo is still relishing himself. On the contrary, Valdo is still relishing himself against the goblins when he is unexpectedly hurled away by one. When he is abruptly discarded by one. Valdo is completely astonished by this, but before they realize it, one of the goblins has reached Asal. While Asal is trembling in terror, Kamaya yells at him to rise and grab his sword. Just as Asal is on the verge of losing his head, just as Asal is about to lose his mind, Kamaya leaps in to obstruct the strike. Kamaya discovers himself battling against the goblins, and he begins pondering if this is the system interference to ensure that Asal perishes. While battling with the goblins, the goblins pierce his shoulder with its pointed claws, causing him to yell in agony. One of the goblins takes the open opportunity. One of the goblins receives the unimpeded opportunity to take Asal down. But Anemone is present to rescue him once more. She slices the goblins and thrusts it down. Just as the goblins is about to rise, an irate Valdo appears to strike the goblins to the floor while discussing how simple it is to hit the goblins because they are humanoid. Kamaya then informs Valdo and Anemone. Kamaya then instructs Valdo and Anemone to drag the goblins away, and Valdo leaps onto one of them. To viciously strike it to death. Anemone also draws her bow. Anemone also readies her bow, shooting arrows at the goblins while instructing the warriors to drive back the goblins. Kamaya soon discovers himself battling against another goblins, and Kamaya instructs Asal to strike the goblins on the head. Asal stiffens, and Kamaya reminds him that this is the pivotal moment of his destiny. Kamaya informs him that he will need to battle if he wishes to survive. Kamaya inquires if he truly desires to become powerful. Like his father, and this inspires Asal to hit the goblin's head. This then provides Kamaya an opportunity to thrust his sword into the goblin's neck, ultimately concluding it. Kamaya praises Asal for his courage. And informs him that they only have a couple more to complete. Kamaya and his crew then escalate their battle against the goblins, assisting them in eliminating all the goblins. Ultimately, Kamaya and his team triumph after a prolonged contested struggle. After a lengthy contested struggle that leaves their blades in a rather poor condition. The crowd celebrates as dawn arrives. The individuals celebrate as dawn arrives, and Kamaya obtains the alert commending them that they have endured the fourth day. They head back to base. They come back to base, and Asal dashes into his mother's embrace. Kamaya is pleased that he was able to reverse Asal's destiny, and with this he is inspired. And with this he is driven to conquer the stampede without losing anyone. To conquer the rush without losing anyone. This is how assured he is, but little does he realize. But small does he realize that the game universe will always gather its payments. Shortly thereafter, Kamaya is capable of elevating the base level to 5. Soon later, Kamaya is capable of elevating the base level to 5. Soon thereafter, Kamaya is capable of elevating the base level to 5. The villagers are astonished by the extent of transformations that took place from accomplishing this, and Sylvian finally witnesses the genuine strength of the magic stone. And Sylvian ultimately witnesses the genuine strength of the enchanted stone. Evidently they managed to accomplish this. Evidently they were capable of accomplishing this due to the creatures that they vanquished and the resources that were gathered in the woods, because they are consistently amassing. Because they are consistently gathering as assets within the enchanted stone. In return for these assets, they can truly enhance the foundation using the enchanted stone's energy. As the foundation is enhanced, as the foundation is fortified, the inhabitants' development also rises. This essentially signifies the more the base is protected. This fundamentally signifies the more the foundation is safeguarded, the more robust the inhabitants become. However, Kamaya informs them that they won't become stronger without taking action, because transformation happens with practice and experience. Kamaya recommends they complete everything swiftly. Kamaya proposes they complete everything swiftly so that they can proceed to their regular training. Thanks to the fact that they managed to elevate the base level using instant build mode. Utilizing instant construction mode, Kamaya obtained staff and apparatus that are rather significant for the initial phases of the game. With their close collaboration, they were able to endure the 2 assaults that ensued. Each of the NPCs developed and their collaboration became quite seamless. Even Assel began advancing at an impressive rate. Even Assel began expanding at an extraordinary rate, and since then the AI hasn't concentrated its assault on Assel again. And before they realize it, the 7th day came, which is the day they are to confront the stampede. Early that morning, Rira discovers Kamaya tending to the swords, and she informs him that breakfast is prepared. Kamaya appreciates her, and she inquires what he is doing. He then responds that he is organizing the arms with low endurance. Since that evening is the stampede, he thinks it would be deadly if the blades shattered during combat. To distinguish the feeble swords, Kamaya attaches red threads to them, and he informs one of the warriors walking by. And he tells one of the fighters passing by not to use the swords marked with red because their durability is low. He urges him to tell everyone else too. He encourages him to inform everyone else as well. Following this, Rira informs him that breakfast is prepared, but Kamaya is still not prepared to eat, as he tells the woman that he needs to inspect the traps first. That night, Kamaya assembles everyone to inform them that they have at last arrived at the 7th day when the stampede takes place. When the rush happens, he informs them that there is a chance that it is going to be on a greater scale than what they have faced so far. Kamaya advises those who will be staying inside the base to select arms so that they can defend the base from the interior as well. Kamaya notifies them that they are going to be utilizing a compact arrangement to prevent being overpowered by the adversary's quantity. He outlines the formation and positions himself on the front lines while Waldo is behind him and Anemone remains at the back, where she can deliver long-distance strikes. Once he is finished arranging the formation, he instructs the combatants to advance. He also encourages them to verify their arms, but Assel seems to be wielding a feeble sword. Because he didn't obtain the information. Nevertheless, he teams up with Kamaya on the front lines. And everyone readies for combat. Kamaya instructs them to shut the gates while they get ready for the foes. Rira and the other inhabitants then sit behind the barriers with their own arms to ensure they are safeguarded. Rira rises from where she is to look after her son. And she is astonished to observe. And she is astonished to see that he is grasping one of the feeble weapons. Moments later, the goblins appear in great quantities. Instants later, the goblins appear in great quantities, and they seem eager for blood. And they appear famished for blood. The alert bar shifts to crimson as Kamaya is cautioned about the extensive invasion that is imminent. As usual, they are anticipated to endure the rush, but the focal point of everything is Asel's armament. Which is clearly feeble. With the vast quantity of goblins emerging, one of the villagers begins to shake as he speaks about the significant number of goblins in their vicinity. However, Kamaya encourages them, urging them not to waver because they have been readying for this precise day. Kamaya then instructs Anemone to launch the blazing arrows. Anemone and the other marksmen get to work as they shoot the arrows into the swarm of goblins. As they launch the projectiles into the swarm of goblins, the arrows instantly produce a massive detonation that shakes and incinerates nearby goblins. Waldo and the other combatants are astonished by this. And they refer to it as the finest fireworks. Evidently, Kamaya deliberately ensured he advanced so he could complete the gunpowder creation. Although he maintained the landmine design straightforward, he thinks that it is more than sufficient for a group of mindless goblins. Kamaya then instructs the warriors to ready themselves. The combatants to ready themselves because they still have additional challenges ahead. More goblins shortly appear from the woods. And they appear more furious than the initial group. However, this doesn't instill dread in Kamaya and his team. As they effortlessly slice through the goblins rushing at them. In the watchtower, Anemone instructs her team to leave the ones on the ground to the melee fighters. While they attempt to eliminate the ones approaching from the back, the goblin count keeps rising. And some even reach the fence, but those positioned behind the fence are capable of repelling them. Driving them away. Kamaya and his troops hold the upper hand as the goblins tumble into the snares. Already set for them. Kamaya is already commending his troops for conquering the battlefield because he thinks that they have an opportunity to reverse the situation. Kamaya hasn't completed stating this when they hear a troubling sound and the earth begins to tremble. Anemone, who is in the lookout tower, yells at Kamaya, informing him that there is something approaching for them. Just then, a massive, frightening goblin emerges from the woods, leaving Kamaya completely astonished and immobilized. What has just emerged is a goblin king. A goblin ruler, and it is a high-status goblin subspecies that possesses immense strength. Its bellow motivates nearby goblins, providing them a fleeting status enhancement. Kamaya cannot trust his vision. Because a goblin chief has no reason appearing in the very initial stampede. As if that is not sufficient, the Goblin King arrives with even more goblins. To complicate issues further. To exacerbate the situation, the goblins seem to be more powerful, and Rira observes her son battling. Against one of the goblins. She worries that matters might take a grim twist if it persists this way. While the others are battling the goblins at the barrier. Rira departs. One of the goblins bursts through, and Kamaya yells out to alert everyone. Anemone understands that matters are spiraling out of control. And she informs her companions that they must depart the watchtower to assist. Anemone and her team leap off, and she touches down securely, but one of them sustains an injury due to a harsh landing. He yells out in agony. And Anemone pulls the guy to those behind the barrier so that they can assist him. She's in the midst of this when Rira dashes past her with a blade in her hand. Rira instantly yells at her. Rira instantly yells at her, inquiring where she believes she is heading. Inquiring her where she believes she is heading, since she is already moving towards the front lines. Rira hasn't even traversed a significant distance. Rira hasn't even traversed a significant distance when she encounters a goblin. When she encounters a goblin, she halts in terror, and just before the goblin can reach her, an enemy takes down the goblin with an accurate shot to the head. Anemone then approaches Rira, insisting to know what in the world she was doing. Rira then discloses that she must present Assel the blade she is grasping. That she must hand Assel the blade she is grasping because his present weapon has poor durability. Anemone is astonished to learn this, and she promptly instructs her team to retreat because she is advancing to the front lines. Anemone then instructs Rira to move ahead while she fends off the goblins. As she sprints through the goblins, Anemone conceals her trail with arrows, hindering the goblins from getting to her, stopping the goblins from arriving at her. Anemone quickly withdraws to the fence, and standing on the fence while observing the battlefield, she understands that matters are about to become significantly worse. She understands that situations are about to become significantly more difficult. At this moment, those on the front lines are already battling because they didn't anticipate the goblins. To simply become more powerful unexpectedly. Kamaya then notifies them that the goblin ruler is the source of their issues. Even Kamaya is astonished that a high-ranking goblin is appearing in a Day 7 stampede. Some quickly discover themselves confronting the Goblin Lord, and the Goblin Lord lifts its weapon prepared to smash them. And the Goblin King lifts its armament prepared to smash them. And the Goblin Lord lifts its weapon prepared to smash them. They elevate their shields to attempt to obstruct the strike, but the blow from the Goblin Lord is so forceful. that it shatters nearby goblins too. The strike from the assault. The blow from the assault sends some of the combatants soaring backwards, and Kamaya inquires if they can still remain upright. Unexpectedly, Assel and one additional combatant advance to assist Kamaya. The Goblin Lord readies another assault. The Goblin Chief readies another assault and swings its large mace at Kamaya. Just as the strike is about to connect, something registers in Kamaya's mind, and he is able to deflect the blow to everyone's astonishment. And he is capable of deflecting the assault to everyone's astonishment. Kamaya rejoices when he observes this. Because even though it is a typical mechanism in games, executing it in reality is rather frightening. The Goblin Lord senses the impact of what Kamaya accomplished. The Goblin Chief senses the impact of what Kamaya did, and this angers it. It bellows loudly to motivate its underlings. It bellows loudly to urge its subordinates to the front lines. Assel and the others promptly step forward. Up to defend Kamaya. To safeguard Kamaya. They inform him that they are entrusting the Goblin Lord to his care. They encourage him to handle the Goblin Lord swiftly. They encourage him to attend to the Goblin Lord swiftly because they are exhausting their breath already. Kamaya then rushes toward the Goblin Lord. While deflecting another strike from it. Even Kamaya could perceive that a conflict of exhaustion would be detrimental for them, and he had to discover a method to conclude the battle as swiftly as possible. Just then, he hears Leafy shout his name. He listens to Leafy shout his name, and he instructs her to bring up the ring control panel. Console. Leafy acknowledges the command, and she activates the console, and Kamaya understands that the AI balancing function. Is presently activated. Leafy inquires Kamaya why he requires the console. And he indicates that the ring modifier is activated. Furthermore, the Generation AI is overwhelmed, which implies he can activate all critical. Leafy is perplexed because she has no understanding of what all critical signifies. When discussing the critical hit, when discussing the crucial strike, it is an assault that bypasses defense and inflicts double harm, but these are typically decided by random number generation. The random number generation is akin to rolling a die. The arbitrary number creation is akin to tossing a die, and these figures dictate the in-game odds. Nevertheless, the game truly has a flaw. However, the game truly has a glitch that they didn't resolve. If one deflects 15 strikes in succession, if one deflects 15 strikes consecutively, the AI would attempt to modify the RNG because hit percentages are too minimal. However, this modification is what overwhelms the memory. However, this modification is what burdens the memory, causing the RNG system to halt, and the temporary outcome is that all strikes become critical hits. Leafy is astonished when she hears this, but Kamaya, on the contrary, just discovered a way out. The reason why he clearly didn't resolve the glitch is that parrying 15 successive strikes. Deflecting 15 successive strikes was almost unfeasible even in play testing. With this consideration, Kamaya directs his focus. With this in consideration, Kamaya aims for achieving 15 successive parries. He lures the Goblin Lord into striking him. But he deflects it. Kamaya persists in doing this, and he also tallies. Asal thinks he is becoming inundated. And he shouts his name. But Kamaya advises him not to be concerned about him because he has a strategy. Because he possesses a strategy. At that instant, Rira has reached the front lines, and she observes her son battling one of the goblins. Kamaya persists in mocking the Goblin Lord. While ensuring he deflects his strikes. Before he realizes it, he reaches 13, and he understands that if he persists with this drive, he will accomplish it. He will complete it. Suddenly, one of the goblins escapes from Asal and rushes toward Kamaya as he reaches the 14th block. As he attains the 14th block, Asal chases the goblin, and just as it is about to strike Kamaya, Asal leaps in to assault it. He strikes the goblin on the head, but his blade shatters. This leaves him vulnerable to assault, but Rira arrives in time, and she tosses a new sword to Asal. With the sword, Asal is capable of slicing down the goblin. With the blade, Asal is capable of slicing down the goblin. Luckily, Kamaya also arrives at the 15th count. Fortunately, Kamaya also attains the 15th count, and he is capable of deflecting the final strike. Kamaya grins when this occurs because he has at last obtained what he desires. He informs his men that everything will conclude in an instant, and he spares no time rushing towards the Goblin Lord. He administers rapid slashes to the Goblin Lord's form. He provides rapid strikes to the Goblin Lord's form, and he lands the ultimate hit to its throat. Kamaya leaps off the goblin's body. Kamaya leaps off the goblin's form and executes the superhero landing just to appear impressive. With all the wounds inflicted on the goblin, it stands no opportunity, and it collapses to the earth in a loud thud. The other goblins observe this and comprehend that they have no opportunity. Without hesitating, the other goblins dash for it, promptly forsaking the fight. Waldo and the others are astonished when they discover that Kamaya truly defeated the enormous, frightening goblin. Rira and her child stand near the goblin with a grin of triumph on their faces. Sadly, they didn't possess a clue. Regrettably, they lacked a notion that the Goblin Lord was not entirely deceased. With the final of its power, it pursues Asal, With the final of its power, it pursues Asal, but Rira leaps in to shield her child. But Rira leaps in to defend her son. Instead of Asal, Rira gets scratched up by the goblin. Kamaya is astonished to witness this. Kamaya is astonished to witness this because he wasn't anticipating the goblin to still be capable of moving. Kamaya promptly pursues it. Kamaya promptly pursues it and administers the final strike to entirely conclude it. However, the goblin has ripped Rira's chest. However, the goblin has ripped Rira's torso and Kamaya observes as Asal weeps over his mother. As she passes away, she informs Asal that she is departing to encounter his father, and she advises him to consistently share with her numerous tales. And she instructs him to consistently share with her numerous tales. With this, Rira reaches her conclusion and Asal emits a piercing cry of suffering and distress. And Asal emits a loud cry of distress and suffering. Everyone observes in silence and sorrow as Asal mourns her fading mother. Just then, the accolades for completing the Stampede quest arrive. But this is positive news that comes with sorrow. The following morning, Kamaya is observed gazing at Rira's tombstone. The following morning, Kamaya is observed gazing at Rira's tombstone and Leafy appears, and Leafy arrives, informing him that she couldn't understand why the Goblin Lord manifested. But at the same moment, there is no evidence. That the game configurations were modified. Leafy then informs him that he still possesses the power. To adjust minor game configurations even though he has been deprived of Game Master status. Leafy keeps chattering until she realizes that Kamaya is not even paying attention. Just then, Kamaya states that he was conceited. Because he was the one who developed the game, leading him to presume that he understood everything about it. This provided him the assurance that he can truly manage whatever comes his direction. In the end, he holds himself responsible for Rira's demise. In the conclusion, he holds himself responsible for Rira's demise because she is not even meant to perish. Leafy attempts to console him, informing him that the Foundation would have been eradicated if not for his genius. Leafy mentions that he is to be grateful for the NPCs that are still surviving. Kamaya concurs that they are living. Kamaya acknowledges that they are alive, but simultaneously, he believes he is at fault because he is the one who brought them into existence and abandoned them to endure in the game. Overcome by everything, Kamaya walks away. Kamaya strolls off into the distance and informs Leafy that he requires some solitude for a moment. That he requires to be solitary for a moment. Moments later, Anemone discovers him where he is perched. She inquires what he is doing, but he declines to respond. She inquires of him what he is doing, but he declines to respond. Anemone then lifts her bow and shoots. Bringing down one of the birds soaring above them. Kamaya is astonished to witness this, and Anemone utilizes this to clarify to him that in this realm, they wager their lives merely to exist. Anemone states that occasionally they claim lives. and then at times their own lives are claimed. Nevertheless, she doesn't believe this is anyone's blame because this is simply how things are. Because this is simply how matters stand. Kamaya wishes to dispute this, but doesn't discover the appropriate words. Anemone understands that he is still damaged. And she instructs him to accompany her because she has something to reveal to him. She leads him to the training area. She brings him to the practice field, and unexpectedly, Asal is already back in training. In fact, he is working quite diligently. In reality, he is laboring quite diligently, and he doesn't appear to be a lad who just lost his mother. Anemone informs Kamaya that Asal has been on the practice field since following the memorial service. Kamaya is astonished to learn this, and Anemone reveals to him that Asal already mentioned And Anemone informs him that Assel already mentioned he desires to have numerous tales to share with his mother, which is why he is resolute about becoming stronger. Just then, the guy training with Assel. Just then, the guy practicing with Assel becomes fatigued and requests a pause. Assel pivots and he is astonished to see Kamaya. He then rushes over to him and with a grin on his face. requests Assel to spar with him. Requests Assel to duel with him. Assel informs Kamaya that he desires to become more powerful so that he can have numerous tales to share with his mother, and for this reason, he's not prepared to succumb. Assel's remarks resonate with Kamaya. And he concurs with Assel, stating he is correct. Kamaya seizes a sword and informs Assel. That he is not going to restrain himself against him. Assel is ready for the challenge, and he rushes toward Kamaya. Kamaya ultimately releases his gloomy self. Kamaya finally releases his gloomy self with the understanding that the NPCs are living, with the understanding that the NPCs are animated, and they are existing with much more power than he even envisioned. Since this is the situation, Kamaya determines that he is not going to be an obstacle for them because he has to demonstrate to them a way of living that they can take pride in. Later on, two gnomes, a master and his trainee. Subsequently, two gnomes, a mentor and his trainee, are observed in the woods near the base. The master discovers a curved arrow on the earth, and he informs his trainee that he can perceive remnants of mana in the arrow, which indicates it was crafted with a magical stone. The trainee is astonished to learn this, and his mentor tells him that they may finally have a clue. Before long, the two discover themselves. In no time, the pair find themselves drawing nearer to the base. The townsfolk are going about their everyday activities. when the dwarves unexpectedly show up at the entrance. Leafy notifies Kamaya of their arrival, but he doesn't appear astonished as if he was already anticipating them. The dwarven expert, Dorn, spares no time insisting to encounter the leader of the village. His trainee, Ginger, attempts to soothe him, informing him that a touch of courtesy won't harm. Kamaya then shows up at the entrance, telling Dorn that he is the one he is searching for. Informing Dorn that he is the individual he is searching for. Dorn goes directly to the matter, inquiring Kamaya if he possesses mana stones in the village. Ginger is astonished at how straightforward his master is, and he interrupts, telling Kamaya that they are wandering dwarves. Informing Kamaya that they are wandering dwarves in pursuit of uncommon resources. Ginger mentions they learned that there were mana gems in the village, and they were wishing that he might allow them to view the gems. The stones. Kamaya then informs the two that they were about to have supper, and he proposes that they take a seat to have dinner. Kamaya welcomes them in, stating that they can carry on the discussion over a meal, the dialogue over a dish. Ginger eagerly accepts the invitation, but Dorn couldn't care less. Moments later, everyone is at the table, and Ginger appears truly astonished. By everything surrounding him. Kamaya recognizes the two as artisans, and he understands that if he can enlist them, he will be capable of managing enhancements and crafting magical tools and weapons that he cannot produce by himself. While they dine, Kamaya inquires Dorn if he was worried about encountering mana stones, and he replies affirmatively. Ginger notes that they are indeed journeying. Ginger states that they are indeed journeying in pursuit of a substance referred to as the Philosopher's Stone. Supposedly, the Philosopher's Stone is regarded as a legend. Evidently, the Philosopher's Stone is regarded as a legend, but many think it truly exists. There are arms in circulation to the current day that were allegedly crafted using the stone. However, even among the dwarves who have existed for so long, none of them has ever witnessed the Philosopher's Stone. Ginger states that, as the artisans that they are, it is the supreme rare substance that they must acquire, that they must obtain. Deep inside, Kamaya realizes that there is a Philosopher's Stone object in the sage's book, but this is something he established as a prize. But this is something he established as a prize for a unique high-level raid mission, which is unattainable through regular gameplay, which is unattainable through standard gameplay. Essentially, Kamaya is the sole individual who can reach the stone. The stone is not merely mana, but the connection between strength. Kamaya asserts that he is not concealing anything. Kamaya asserts that he is not concealing anything in the mana stone, but there is a motive behind everything. Kamaya then inquires of the two once more if they wish to view the stone, and he informs them that even a crude mana ore is exceptionally uncommon. Kamaya adds that the crude mana ore is significant to the village, and Ginger informs him. That they merely wish to utilize it for reference. Since they only want to examine it, Kamaya doesn't believe there is any problem whatsoever. However, he conveys to them. He informs them that they are going to create some arms for them in return for witnessing it. Kamaya discloses that they are under assault by creatures nearly every night, and to safeguard his community, they are going to require top-notch gear. Since it is a minor cost to pay, since it is a minor cost to cover, Dorn consents to produce the apparatus. Dorn consents to create the apparatus. Kamaya then informs him that he is going to display the mana stone once they have finished dining. However, Kamaya is anxious. Kamaya is concerned about how he is going to persuade the dwarves to accompany him. Moments later, Kamaya leads them to the cabin. Instants later, Kamaya leads them to the lodge to display the mana gem. After examining it, Dorn scolds Kamaya for presenting them something so dreadful because this isn't what he desires. Kamaya is astonished to witness. Kamaya is astonished to observe that Dorn has already determined that the mana stone is more akin to a portal than a substance. It is essentially a channel for mana, fundamentally distinct from the material they pursue. Essentially distinct from the substance they pursue. Kamaya is amazed that Dorn's perception is accurate. Evidently, Dorn is correct because the mana stone is simply a conduit for the player and it is not the type of item one can truly utilize as a raw material. One can truly utilize as a basic substance. Dorn then expresses gratitude to Kamaya for revealing the stone, but informs him that it doesn't offer a clue on the Philosopher's Stone that he is seeking. Dorn informs Kamaya that they will be departing the following morning. Ginger is astonished to learn this and Kamaya tells Dorn. And Kamaya informs Dorn that he is more than invited to remain longer if he wishes because they have an unoccupied workshop and there are resources that can be created using the mana stone. Kamaya assures them that he can truly offer a superb production setting for them. Even with all of his generous proposals, even with all of his kind proposals, Dorn refuses and Kamaya sighs in dismay. Since they are not going to remain, he reminds Dorn of the pledge he made to forge weapons because creatures are certainly going to assault again that evening. Are certainly going to strike again that evening. Kamaya informs the two that he is going to guide them to the workshop and they are welcome to utilize any of the tools there. Conversely, on the contrary, Leafy is frightened that the dwarves may never unite with them. Kamaya concurs with her, stating Dorn's passion is focused on discovering the Philosopher's Stone and anything beneath that won't sway him, and anything below that won't shift him. However, Kamaya understands that Ginger is still youthful and eager. As an artisan, he probably wants to observe how individuals respond to his creations to determine precisely how much of an influence his abilities can have. Kamaya states he recognizes the sentiment. Kamaya states he understands the emotion because this was how he felt when he began creating games. Kamaya thinks that Ginger would remain. Kamaya thinks that Ginger would remain if he noticed that he could truly realize his potential at the village. His capability at the village. Later that evening, creatures appear at the village and Ginger is astonished to see. And Ginger is astonished to witness that the creatures are truly assaulting them. While the conflict is occurring, the archers discuss how remarkable the fortified arrowheads are because they possess extraordinary penetrating strength. Ginger overhears this and he states that he could have enhanced the precision if he had additional time. However, the archers inform him. However, the marksmen inform him that they are thankful because what he accomplished is sufficient. At the same moment, Ginger observes how skilled Waldo is with the blade, and judging by how he maneuvers, and assessing by how he maneuvers, he thinks that a large sword would be superior for a hefty guy like him. Ginger also observes that Assel would be a more skilled combatant. Ginger also observes that Assel would be a superior combatant if he could modify the center of mass for his weapon. If he could modify the center of mass for his weapon. While he is occupied envisioning all the wonderful things he could accomplish, his mentor is observing him, and he can distinctly see that he is getting influenced. And he can distinctly observe that he is being influenced. During the intensity of the conflict, Leafy inquires Kamaya if he believes Ginger would truly ally with them, and Kamaya replies his statements alone may not suffice to persuade him. But with the perspective he is perceiving, but with the manner he is perceiving things, it seems that Ginger is already relishing himself. The subsequent morning, Ginger emerges from the workshop in readiness to begin departing when one of the villagers strolls by. When one of the townsfolk strolls by, expressing gratitude for his assistance the previous evening. Another approaches him, informing him that they managed to defeat the foes effortlessly because of him. Ginger grins, stating he is pleased that he could be of assistance. Waldo and Assel also arrive, informing Ginger that the blade he fashioned was amazing and keen. Assel also appreciates Ginger for modifying his sword because it has made it simpler for him to wield his sword. Waldo teasingly slaps Ginger, telling him that he should just remain in the village so he can craft him a personalized weapon. Assel then informs Waldo that Ginger and his mentor are indeed departing that day. Waldo is astonished to learn this, and he discusses how it is a great pity that they are leaving. Waldo and Assel then stroll away, and Waldo extends his goodbye, stating he is confident that their routes will intersect again. Everything they mention somewhat affects Ginger. And he is still attempting to move past it when Kamaya arrives. When Kamaya appears, inquiring if he is already departing. Ginger affirms this, stating his master's attention is fixed on the Philosopher's Stone. Kamaya then questions Ginger what he intends to do. Ginger gazes in bewilderment, and Kamaya notes that he can distinctly observe that the Philosopher's Stone isn't the sole thing he is fascinated by. Kamaya highlights that existence in the village is tough. Because creatures assault every single night, and even with enchanted stones, their supplies are not plentiful. Kamaya admits, stating they are understaffed as it is. Kamaya informs Ginger that it is precisely this reason that the village requires him, because his impact is significant. Kamaya explains to Ginger that his abilities essentially determine how long the villagers are going to survive. Kamaya then extends his hand to Ginger, encouraging him to accompany them and remain in the village. Before Ginger can reach his conclusion, Dorn emerges from the workshop, informing Kamaya that they are finished and are prepared to depart. Ginger succeeds in composing himself, and he informs Dorn that he wishes to remain in the village. Dorn is astonished to hear this, and he inquires Ginger if he is sincere about what he just stated. Ginger responds that he is, and Dorn informs him that he must create a weapon. Ginger is puzzled by this, and Dorn explains to him that he cannot allow someone. Who is garbage roam out into the world. Wander out into the world, so he must create a weapon to demonstrate himself. Ginger consents to this, and he begins to crafting the weapon. While he is laboring on it, Kamaya inquires if there is anything he requires because he can produce materials with the magic stone. Ginger appreciates Kamaya. But he informs him that he would prefer to accomplish this with his own power or else there will be no significance to it. Kamaya grins when he hears this. Kamaya grins when he listens to this and he strolls away to allow the guy to handle his task. Soon after, Ginger completes crafting the sword and Dorn examines it. Dorn discovers that Ginger fabricated it so that humans can utilize it. So that individuals can utilize it. Dorn states that a mediocre artisan examines the item to perform his task. Observes the item to perform his task, but a top-notch artisan observes the individuals. Since Ginger fashioned the sword for human utilization, Dorn can perceive where his attention is directed. Dorn arrives at the realization that he possesses his own flame and Ginger has his. Dorn is awed by what Ginger created and he advises him not to let his fire extinguish. And he instructs him not to permit his fire to extinguish while encouraging him to pursue the flame inside himself. Ginger is astonished to hear this and he inquires of his master if this signifies he succeeded. Dorn declines to say anything further. Dorn declines to mention anything further and as he departs, he informs Kamaya that he is entrusting Ginger to his care. Dorn proceeds into the woods. Dorn navigates into the woods and Ginger bows to his owner for all he has acquired thus far. For all that he has discovered thus far. Leafy and Kamaya grin at one another because they ultimately have an artisan and Leafy states they must enhance their manufacturing foundation. And Leafy states they need to enhance their manufacturing foundation. Kamaya concurs with her and mentions it is time. Kamaya concurs with her and states it is time they elevate the base level. They elevate the base level. Kamaya instantly raises the base level to 8 and Ginger is astonished. And Ginger is astonished since this is his initial time witnessing the stone's strength. Because the foundational level has risen. Because the foundation level has risen, the external walls and the workshop also received some enhancements. Ginger enters the workshop and he is left in amazement. Ginger walks into the workshop and he is filled with wonder. Kamaya informs him that the workshop is for him. Kamaya informs him that the workshop is for him so he is free to utilize it however he wishes. Ginger appreciates Kamaya for this. Discussing how he has a lot that he wishes to experiment with. Discussing how he has plenty that he wishes to experiment with. After exiting the workshop, Kamaya informs Leafy that enlisting Ginger was a significant victory given the confrontations to come. Was a significant victory considering the challenges ahead. Kamaya notes that the condition of their gear is poor and this is where Ginger steps in. Apparently the upgrade has also risen. Evidently the advancement has also raised the quantity of resources the enchanted stone can hold. Kamaya then states that he would like to begin gathering mana in the forthcoming skirmishes. It appears that Kamaya and Leafy are anticipating a specific female character now that the base has attained level 8. Now that the foundation has attained level 8. Thanks to incorporating Ginger into the team, the standard of gear enhanced and the village was able to effortlessly conquer. And the village was capable of effortlessly conquering its foes during conflicts. Thus alleviating the strain on the villagers. Thus lessening the load on the villagers involved in fighting. It appears that Ginger is also serving in a support capacity. It appears that Ginger is also serving as a support position for an enemy in the watchtower. Since they have 3 additional days until the next stampede. Kamaya understands that they must rush. Kamaya understands that they must rush and bolster their stance. On the 11th day, Ginger assembles the townsfolk because he has something to display to them. The villagers are astonished. The townsfolk are astonished to observe the mound of clay positioned in front of them, and Ginger informs them that what they are gazing at are golems. Ginger states that it is a spell-powered figure that operates independently. Golems are essentially assistance objects. Golems are essentially assistance items that can engage in combat alongside NPSC, and they can perform the same function as the character designated as their master. As the figure designated as their master. If a swordsman is appointed as a golem's master, it wields a sword. And if an archer is assigned as its master, it will understand how to manage a bow. Their statistics are merely a diminished version of their masters, but they are beneficial for filling the unit's counts. Ginger states that he has always desired to construct one. Ginger states that he has consistently desired to construct one, and due to the circumstance that they are at the base of the enchanted stone, he is capable of making them shift. Anemone becomes inquisitive. Anemone becomes inquisitive, and he inquires Ginger if the golem can shift. Ginger informs her that once a master is assigned for it, it can battle precisely like the individual, but its skills will be diminished. One of the townsfolk asks if the golems can help with tasks, and Ginger replies affirmatively. Ginger asserts that everything can be accomplished with the golems. Suddenly the golem's eyes activate, and Ginger is astonished that the golems are responding. He ponders if there is an alternate source of mana nearby, of energy near them. Just then, one of the townsfolk yells out to notify everyone that someone is approaching. The unusual individual soon reaches the entrance. The peculiar individual soon reaches the entrance, and when they take off their hood, they prove to be an elf. With a radiant grin on her face, she presents herself as Ulisha Vibewald and astonishes everyone by disclosing, that she is there to confront the chief of the village to a duel. It appears that Ulisha is the offspring. of the Queen of the White Forest. Kimia is not completely astonished. Because this essentially signifies he has fulfilled the requirements to bring Ulisha into the group. Kimia then advances, disclosing that he is the chief of the village. Ulisha informs Kimia that he must compel her. That he must appoint her the chief of the village if he fails. Ulisha guarantees Kimia that he has nothing to be concerned about because she will certainly enhance the village. Kimia grins when he hears this, and he inquires Ulisha what she is wagering on the battle in case she fails. Ulisha contends that she cannot fail, but just to be equitable, she informs Kimia that he is at liberty to request her to do anything he desires. Kimia then inquires if she is not going to renege on her promise, and she vows on her mother's name. That she is not going to renege on her promise. Her assurance leaves Leafy anxious. But Kimia is standing firm like the man he is as he gets ready to confront Ulisha. As they get ready for their confrontation, the townsfolk withdraw behind the barrier so they don't get ensnared in the conflict. Sylvian, who is occupied savoring a bottle of wine, inquires about who Ulisha is, and Ginger notes that she is an elf from the White Forest clan. He clarifies that they are quite solitary, so they don't truly explore the external world. Waldo chuckles heartily when he recalls what Ulisha mentioned about becoming the village leader. Which is essentially a scenario of the strongest becoming the chief. Once everything is prepared, Kimia informs Ulisha that they are going to commence the duel once the coin he's about to toss strikes the ground. Kimia complies as instructed, and the instant the coin strikes the earth. Ulisha launches a gust assault at Kimia. Unexpectedly, she manages to evade it. She is capable of evading it, but the townsfolk are left in astonishment and wonder, because they didn't even realize what occurred, since it is their initial time witnessing such an assault. Ginger informs them that Ulisha employed offensive magic, and by the appearance of things, she is quite skilled with it. While the townsfolk are concerned that Kimia is going to encounter difficulties, Ulisha is quite impressed that he is managing well. Ulisha is quite amazed that he is enduring well. However, she escalates the pace of her assaults. She elevates the pace of her assaults to determine just how much Kimia can endure. Nonetheless, Kimia is capable of evading. Nonetheless, Kimia is capable of evading everything she hurls at him. Apparently, Yulisha is a novice slayer character. Evidently, Yulisha is a novice slayer character. The strength of her wind sorcery is immense. The strength of her wind sorcery is overpowering since it is difficult to perceive. Once a player fails to grasp the tactic behind her strikes, they are certainly going to be defeated. Behind her assaults, they are certainly going to fail, which will destroy their opportunities of enlisting her. However, Kimia is assured that he can manage her. Since he can effortlessly interpret her assaults. Since he can effortlessly interpret her strikes just by how she brandishes her wand. Just then, one of her strikes heads directly for Kimia. But he deflects it with his shield. Yulisha is astonished when she witnesses this because it is the first time she's encountered something like that. It appears that her strikes are effective against flesh. It appears that her assaults function against flesh and blood creatures, but they won't penetrate an iron barrier crafted by Ginger. But they won't pass through a metal barrier crafted by Ginger. While Yulisha is still attempting to regain her composure, while Yulisha is still attempting to gather herself, Kimia approaches. Just as he is about to hit her, she jumps into the air with her air sorcery. The townsfolk are swept away when they witness this. The townsfolk are astonished when they witness this, and they begin hoping they could soar like Yulisha. While she is in the sky, she begins preparing a powerful spell, and Kimia realizes that this is going to be deadly. If it strikes him. Nevertheless, he continues rushing at her, and while Yulisha mocks him for sprinting to his demise, she has no clue that he is truly devising something for her. Once she is finished with the incantation, she attempts throwing it at Kimia, but the spell unexpectedly disintegrates, leaving her in astonishment. But the enchantment abruptly disintegrates, leaving her in astonishment. Before she can compose herself, before she can gather herself, Kimia drags her down with a strap. Kimia yanks her down with a strap. Kimia then hauls her nearer and directs the blade at her, so she can understand that she has been defeated. Kimia informs her that her advanced magic didn't function because the magic stone in the vicinity is too weak, which essentially signifies the surroundings lack the capacity to support advanced magic. Since Yulisha is incapacitated and unable to move, since Yulisha is defeated and cannot shift, Kimia considers it his victory. Yulisha also acknowledges that she was defeated. Yulisha also concurs that she was defeated, but she stays perplexed and astonished that she was bested by someone who doesn't even utilize magic. Kimia then reminds her of her vow. Kimia then recalls her vow, and she nearly collapses when she understands. That she must do whatever he commands. Just as anticipated, Kimia requests her to join the team. Kimia requests her to join the group, which she has no option but to do. Kimia also instructs her to tidy up the consequences. of the conflict since she shattered everything. Leafy then remarks that it is an extra. Leafy then states that it is an advantage for them to have Yulisha, who is a sorceress among them, and Kimia concurs with this. With Yulisha present, Kimia proposes. Kimia proposes that they try out some fresh strategies that evening. Later on, Kimia and the team venture into the woods. Subsequently, Kimia and the group venture into the woodland, and while navigating the trees, Kimia inquires of Leafy if she has any notion. About what is happening in the actual world. Leafy responds that she can't see the real world. The actual world from where she is. She states that the only thing she understands. The sole thing she understands is the reality that the Game Master was altered. Kimia discloses that the alteration in Game Masters is the cause some aspects of the game are heading in the incorrect direction. Kimia then informs Leafy that he is resolute. Kimia then informs Leafy that he is resolute to attain level 100 as quickly as possible. Leafy inquires why he needs to achieve level 100. Leafy inquires why he must reach level 100, and he discloses that the instant he arrives at level 100, and he discloses that the instant he reaches level 100, he can access the tower. Kimia informs her that there are restrictions. Kimia informs her that there are boundaries to what he can accomplish, even though he is presently functioning in developer mode. To achieve more, he states he must reach the tower. To accomplish more, he states he must reach the tower because he requires the energy. Unexpectedly, Elisha halts him. Abruptly, Elisha halts him, inquiring how much longer they must stroll, and Kimia replies they will continue moving. And Kimia states they will continue until they discover some creatures. It appears that Kimia is intending to evaluate. Elisha's sorcery and the golems in readiness for the evening's conflict. Kimia then inquires how much magic she is capable of utilizing. Kimia then inquires how much sorcery she can utilize, and she begins babbling about how she can wield wind sorcery and other elements. However, Kimia questions her how much magic. Kimia inquires her how much enchantment she can truly utilize in the vicinity. Kimia discreetly responds that she can merely use. Kimia quietly responds that she can only utilize a handful of wind-based defensive spells and some mobility assistance types. Noticing the way Kimia is gazing at her, she informs him that she is quite feeble. Because there are only inferior moonstones in the vicinity, and she could genuinely accomplish more with superior ones. Kimia then conveys to her that he is not accusing her, but he wants her to understand the kind of magic. He desires her to understand the kind of magic she can utilize and her boundaries because he doesn't want her to repeat the same error she committed previously. Ginger then inquires Kimia if it's his strategy. Ginger then inquires Kimia if it's his intention to match Elisha with the golems. And Kimia replies yes. And Kimia replies affirmatively, since they lack any other inhabitants who can wield magic. He concludes that synchronizing the golem with their mystical firepower would expand their strategic choices. He proposes that they appoint Elisha as the golem's controller. He proposes that they appoint Elisha as the golem's master so that it can utilize magic just like her even if it is not as powerful as hers. Kimia then instructs Elisha to infuse her mana into the golems. So that she can instruct them in her magic. Elisha consents and she rests her hand on the golem. Elisha consents and she puts her hand on the golem, channeling her magic into it. After she is finished, Kimia informs her that she can dispatch directions by picturing them. Elisha shuts her eyes and conjures a charm to jump into the sky. By the moment she opens her eyes, by the moment she unveils her eyes, the golems are already hovering just like her. Since the initial attempt is triumphant, Kimia advises her to employ the same strategies to eliminate the monster bunnies in the distance. Elisha willingly agrees to the guidance. Elisha willingly embraces the guidance since she despises creatures in the first place. She launches her wind assault at the bunnies. She throws her wind assault at the bunnies, and unexpectedly the golems continue by releasing a wind explosion at the bunnies, unleashing a gust of air at the bunnies. Elisha delights in herself so much and adds more style to it, compelling the bunnies to flee, driving the bunnies to flee. Even though they are already sprinting, Elisha ensures to remove most of them. Elisha ensures to eliminate most of them with her strong wind explosion. Once the creatures are managed, she gradually lowers and acknowledges that the golems are rather beneficial. Kimia then informs her that the golem functions. Based on its owner's power, so she can't be lazy during training. Weary of being commanded, she casually states she comprehends everything Kimia is expressing. With this, Kimia grins because they just gained an advantage in combat. Meanwhile, Anahara is collapsing in the actual world. Anahara is failing in the real world because everything he arranged is not proceeding the way he desires, and he is already contemplating. and he is already contemplating adopting a more assertive strategy to the entire scenario. That evening, the creatures emerge as customary. That evening, the creatures emerge as customary and Kimia obtains the standard Survive the Night quest. Unexpectedly, Kimia places Elisha and her golems. Unexpectedly, Kimia places Elisha and her golems on the front lines, informing her that she is the crucial element to everything. Informing her that she is the solution to everything. Being the conceited pampered child that she is, she responds nonchalantly that she is aware of this. As the creatures approach, Kimia understands that the goblins have begun battling in a coordinated fashion. He doesn't ponder this too much. He doesn't ponder too much about this because he believes that the greater the base rises, the more unusual the adversary's combat style will turn. To Kimia, he feels that it is his moment. To Kimia, he thinks that it is his moment for the village to progress its strategies too. For the village to enhance its strategies too. Anemone and her team are the first to take action by releasing a volley of arrows at the goblins to disturb their arrangement. Elisha also participates in the assault. As she unleashes her sorcery with a broad grin on her face. As she rushes toward the goblins, the golems also remain by her side. Kimia deliberately positioned her on the front lines. Because her strength and mobility allowed her to function like a typical cavalry unit. With Anemone and Elisha handling the long-range tasks. Long-distance tasks, Kimia instructs the melee team to confront the goblins. Waldo and his team tackle the foes on the left. While Kimia shifts to the right. With the long-distance strikes immobilizing the adversaries. With the extended range assaults immobilizing the foes and hindering their progress, it facilitates the ground troops. It simplifies it for the ground troops to inflict significant harm. With Kimia's strategy proceeding so smoothly, everyone on the battlefield is relishing themselves more than normal. Kimia then instructs Waldo to move forward swiftly. So that they can eliminate the leader to conclude the conflict once and for all. Waldo confirms to Kimia that he understands the strategy. Waldo guarantees Kimia that he understands the strategy, and just as he is sprinting toward the goblin chief, he has no clue that Elisha is already aiming at the leader too. Waldo nearly gets struck by Elisha's assault. But she yells at him to alert him, which provides him just enough time to flee unscathed. Hardly sufficient time to flee unscathed. Waldo yells at Elisha, inquiring what is the matter with her, and Elisha responds that Waldo was the one. Who was obstructing her. While they are occupied disputing, Waldo has no clue that a goblin has approached his location. However, Kimia is capable of alerting him. Before he gets sliced in two by a refused goblin. Waldo deflects the strike and Kimia instructs him to keep fending off the goblins. While he and the other team complete the task. Waldo succeeds in breaking free from the goblin's grasp. Escaping the goblin's grasp, and he thrusts his sword into the leader's throat, slaying him. The remainder of the goblins witness this and terror seizes them, but Kimia and his crew are not inclined to halt. Not about to ease up. They pursue the goblins. And ensure that they eliminate them all. After the conflict is concluded, just as anticipated. After the conflict is finished, just as anticipated, Waldo approaches Elisha to yell at her for nearly incinerating him alive. Kimia already understands that these kinds of occurrences will take place because they still have problems with their coordination. However, he understands that Elisha is going to be a strong advantage for them. If nothing else, Kimia is resolute to enhance their combat technique for the upcoming stampede that is in 3 days. For the upcoming stampede that is in 3 days.